Hey, this is Kevin from News Rocky coming to you live from the Network TV studio in downtown Norwich at 80 Broadway. We're going to bring you a really interesting conversation today on the show. Today we're going to talk about what I want to call the fake news corporate media. That's right. Corporate media tries to convince each and every one of us that they're actually getting to the facts. They're actually presenting the real news. Well, in many cases, we're going to go over some historical, proven facts where corporate media has created fake news. All that and more on the News Rocky Show. So stay in the ring. Hey, welcome back, guys. This is Kevin from News Rocky. And as I said in the opener, we're going to talk about the corporate media and the way that they attempt to make fake news believable. There's been many parts of our history of our country when we can look back and see how media has been personally involved in the creating of news. No time in the history of this country have we seen a greater attempt at this than now, today. The current news media is trying to create more news each and every day, and I believe it's an effort to divide this country for political beliefs, political connections. It's also got something to do with the fact that there's hatred towards one president, the previous president, the 45th, Donald J. Trump. We're going to look back on history and check out a few of the events that took place, pick them apart, talk about it a little bit, and try to figure out really what happened. For example, we're going to talk about 1996. In 1996, the Summer Olympics were taking place in Atlanta. And at the Atlanta Games, there was an explosion that took place on July 27th of 1996. At this Olympic Games, this explosion took place and 111 people were injured and 2 fatalities. Right away, the obvious was that this was a terrorist-type action. This was set on purpose, obviously, a pipe bomb being placed in a high-traffic area at the Olympics in Atlanta, in America, was purposeful. There was a message. Somebody was delivering a message. Interesting enough that the FBI, all the power players involved, the Atlanta Police Department, but more importantly, the CNN, NBC, the national brand corporate media, they jumped heavily involved into this quickly. And there's a name that goes along with this story, and I know folks that are out there who listen to News Rocky, we've talked about it before. I actually bring this conversation up because I think it's one of the greatest examples of how corporate media destroys lives. And when I say destroys lives, they did what I think is the most egregious to Richard Jewell, the security guard who was involved in the most horrific attempt to destroy a person's character by CNN and the other corporate media. They named Richard Jewell the security guard within 48 hours. They named him as a suspect. What did that do to Richard Jewell? What did that cause his life to go through? Not only did CNN convince the local authorities of this, the FBI, they swayed the entire country to believe that Richard Jewell was the culprit behind this bombing. It's quite interesting because Richard Jewell was the actual one who was able to save lives. And during the investigation, as it went through, they verified that Richard Jewell actually saved many lives on that day. He was also an eyewitness and was able to collaborate many stories through the process. And you see, during that investigation, because he was just an honest guy, saying an honest thing to a very unhonest, dishonest corporate media, he got taken advantage of. He was dragged through the mud, he was ridiculed, he was labeled, and eventually it was even attempted to prosecute and charge Richard Jewell. Now, we all know the story that this eventually was proven not to be Richard Jewell, and he was exonerated of any charges or claims. But the problem that lies in this entire conversation back in 1996, that it wasn't law enforcement who named Richard Jewell. It was the media. You see, the media today, especially on CNN, for example, we have people like Don Squeeze 'em Lemons. Don Lemons loves to attack all the other media sources that give an alternative to the narrative that he pushes. He and his partner Cuomo, yes, the most famous Cuomo, or is he not? the governor's brother. They love to participate in what I call the inflaming of the division and the divide that takes place on many issues, such as race, such as the political divide. You see, CNN has really exploited this, and they've been doing it for a long time. And the funny part is, when you watch CNN or CNBC or NBC or any of the corporate networks, and I call Fox a corporate network as well, but I believe Fox News is more independent than any of the others. I believe that for a reason that I'll get into in a little bit. Let's stay focused on CNN. Let's stay focused on the fact that they today want to call out fake news on every level. In fact, the previous president, the 45th, Donald J. Trump, when he kicked the doors in down in D.C., I love to say that all the time, and he pointed at the news media and called them fake, they put a target on his back. Not only did they take the claim of fake from Donald Trump, who was pointing the finger at the corporate media, they took it and placed it back at him. They tried to attack that president on every level. In fact, debunking or attempting to debunk everything he put out. Before the opposite side, meaning the Democrats in Washington, D.C., could even put together an attack, corporate media was out in front of it each and every time on Donald Trump. What's this have to do with Atlanta, 1996, and Richard Jewell? The same attacks that took place over the last 4 years on the president were the same smears, the same division, the same attempt to create a narrative to a story by CNN and many of the other corporate news medias. Let me ask you guys something. Do you believe corporate media? Do you think they bring you the actual facts and the news? We know News Rocky. We talk about, we take on the news of the day, we drill down on it, we take on some fake news, we look at how we can exploit what might be contradictory information. Conflict that takes place throughout this country has always been labeled on one side of the aisle or the other. It seems that the political divide has created the news divide. Now, I don't want to say that back during the 1996 Olympics that there was such a divide in the political system. There certainly was, but it wasn't to the extreme that it is today. But you see, when you look at corporate media and they make these claims of the fake news networks, fake news narratives, fake news politicians, fake news on social media, it's very interesting to me. They're actually as guilty, if not more guilty, of creating fake news in this country. They've taken their platform, CNN, NBC, all the corporate media stations, and they've exploited things for their own benefit. Richard Jewell was just an average guy. He was just a security guard, a guy who wanted to be a law enforcement professional, lived at home with his mother, a simple guy, a simple American, who was labeled by the corporate media, labeled not just as the guy who laid this pipe bomb, but he plotted this evil event, and his desires were to kill many more. And he was part of organizations that were involved. This is the stuff that CNN and the rest of the corporate media put out there, that this guy was involved in some kind of deep plot to kill Americans. You see, it sold newspapers. It sold ad time. And CNN has created this as part of their platform over years, and they try to each and every day, they try to make the claim that they're not guilty of what they've done. Well, I want to say this today, and I want you folks that are out there listening, I want to hear what you have to say. So please comment here. I want to react to the comments. I want to hear your opinion. I believe CNN is guilty of killing Richard Jewell, and I'll get to that in a moment. Let me tell you what happened. 1996, Richard Jewell is a security guard, as we said. Just working his way through the system. Basically, he wants to be an officer, law enforcement. Guy's just an average guy trying to get his experience. He's a security guard at the Olympics, a big event in Atlanta in 1996. Obviously, anytime the Olympics takes place anywhere in the world, especially America, it's a big event. So here it is, the biggest stage on earth at the time. All the cameras, all the networks, everyone was there. But yet, at the end of the day, Richard Jewell was doing his job. Richard Jewell sees this incident taking place. As I said earlier, he was able to help and save lives. And as he went through this process, quickly, as he was identified as one of the first responders. CNN News labeled him, their affiliate company, and they labeled him as the bomber. What happened to Richard Jewell? Eventually, he was proven not to be involved. He was obviously tortured through the entire process. This did not just happen overnight. It didn't happen over weeks. His entire rest of his life until his tragic passing at a young age was all documented easily on the obvious issue that was taking place here was corporate media didn't care. They wanted to label someone quickly. They wanted to put someone as a guy who was, just the average guy, just trying to get in there and do his thing and be a security guard, did the right thing, went in to save lives. And the next thing, CNN and corporate media labeled him as the guy. I don't know what else to say in regards to this. All I can say is this. Richard Jewell is a sad, tragic story in American history, and I want you to look into that story. I want you to review it, read about it. There's great articles out there. In fact, there's a good article from the University of Columbia. You can read that article. It's a great article to read. I actually delved into that one. It was written in 2000, definitely by Ronald Ostro, who really got into the case and really talked about exactly how corporate media really spearheaded this entire corrupt investigation. And the FBI and the power players, the instrumental people in the investigation were believing Richard Jewell was guilty. Unfortunately for Richard Jewell, it ruined his life, and eventually it took his life. CNN, in my opinion, is 100% responsible for what they did to Richard Jewell in 1996. I want to hear your thoughts on that, so please, again, chime in. We're going to go on to a couple more stories here talking about corporate media. Today's topic of the day is how we're going to talk about each one of these topics that I bring up. It's fake news. But you see, the fake news networks that try to create this energy saying that other sources are fake, they themselves are held accountable. They should be held accountable. You see, what's happened in this country, though, is we've gotten into a point where we see our own personal opinions being criticized. Our First Amendment rights are denied. When the President of the United States, Donald Trump, the 45th former president, when he is censored by all platforms, his First Amendment rights are denied. Now, some want to say, because as we've talked about on this show many times, last week included, how this is all corporations and it's private industry. But is it fair to allow one side of a conversation? They've done this to this president, the previous president, the 45th, not Joe Biden, the 46th. They've done it to President Trump for the entire 4 years he was serving. But yet the entire time, these same networks, these same corporate media networks, were throwing it out there that Donald Trump was a fake news stirring son of a bitch. Well, guess what? You're more guilty, CNN. You're more guilty, corporate media. You've created this in this country. It's an appetite that has a thirst that you cannot satisfy. In fact, your own thirst to create the news and create divide has been obvious. Now, the Washington Post had an article in 2015. I found this article to be interesting. And this is, again, it's going to speak to the narrative of fake news. Hands Up, Don't Shoot was built on a lie. Hands Up, Don't Shoot was built on a lie. Now, we're going to get into why I'm saying that and what's that mean. Obviously, when I'm talking about the saying, hands up, don't shoot, we're talking about Michael Brown. Ferguson, victim in 2014, called a victim, identified as a subject in a shooting, a police shooting, where a police officer shot an unarmed man named Michael Brown, 18 years old, in Ferguson on August 9th of 2014. Then the President of the United States was Barack Obama. President Obama was obviously very much in front of the social issues of the day, and he certainly took this topic on very seriously. One of the major issues that took place during this as in many of these cases that we talk about where corporate media is rushed to judgment, is once the information is released, once it's out there, once it's exposed, once it's put out in the airways, it's very difficult to retract. So when we had the final moments to actually evaluate the situation, the obvious was that corporate media, along with the political control parties from the White House on down, had already convicted the law enforcement officer in this shooting. What they were able to come out and ascertain within hours of the shooting was that this officer purposely shot and killed Michael Brown without cause. That was pretty much the narrative that was spread for many, many months. Riots ensued. It was actually the birth of Black Lives Matters. The birth of Black Lives Matters came from this very incident. Hands up, don't shoot was built on a lie. You see, when you look at the history of what hands up, don't shoot means, we can talk honestly about, yes, we have many issues of race in this country. We're still not fixed it. We still have not gotten in front of it. We still have not tried to really take it on in the way that it should be. Even today, under the false promises of political control parties, it's still growing and it's still an issue. But yet back in 2014 under Barack Obama, CNN, CNBC, NBC, CBS, all the corporate media, they came right out and said that this police officer who was involved in this shooting, he was guilty. He was guilty, and he was actually the individual who shot and killed Michael Brown for no reason. Hands up, don't shoot. Hands up, don't shoot started with this incident. When you look at the story, guys, and you listen to the actual report, when the FBI was able to do a final investigation and they released it, and the police officer was not indicted, he was not charged, he was innocent because Michael Brown attacked him. You see, Michael Brown that day had already had an incident in one of the local bodegas where he had gone in and strong-armed the business owner on video. Does that justify being shot? No. When Michael Brown had contact with the officer, the officer who arrived on the scene, who had a clear size difference. There was a major size difference in these two guys. Michael Brown was a very large young man. Michael Brown initially went right at the officer when he was attempted to be handcuffed. Michael Brown made moves on this officer using his size and his strength, forcing the officer to defend his life. Michael Brown reached for the gun. And in attempting to reach for the gun and trying to take control of this officer, the officer delivered fire to stop the actions of Michael Brown. Hands up, don't shoot. See, it's tough for Michael Brown, even in that situation, to put his hands up. He was attacking the police officer. You see, the narrative to this entire story was created by the corporate media. Guys, you got to think about where we are today in the society we live in, what we've experienced since George Floyd, the tragic death of George Floyd, where a police officer, a rogue police officer, however you look at it, was wrong and should be convicted. Everyone agrees on that. And there's been many cases across this country of crimes that have taken place where officers in badges and uniforms are guilty. I don't remember the exact details. In Georgia, there was an officer who shot a man in his back as he was running through a park. He was quickly indicted, quickly charged, and quickly sentenced, the officer was, to life in jail. And he should be. No one's ever going to argue that. But see, the corporate media wants us to believe that these stories of racism and divide are really happening. That police officers wake up in the morning and put their uniform on with some vision of going out and killing a black African-American young man in communities of color. It's just not true. Not in any level that's been depicted in the national corporate media. You see, but we hear this narrative, and so what happens? We, the people, start to believe the narrative. I want you to really take a moment. I know you're listening, and I know you're commenting. And what I need you to do is pull up some information on Michael Brown. Look into the story. Hands up, don't shoot. It was built on a lie. You see, the lie that was told not just by corporate media was told by Barack Obama at the White House in his position as president. And including the entire liberal community came out in force. And they convicted this officer, they condemned law enforcement, and there was an all-out attack on men and women in uniform across this country. This was all an orchestrated event that took place by media. The actual event that took place was an unfortunate event. No police officer I know personally, and I know hundreds of them, I speak to them all the time, wants to get up and kill somebody and have to go through that. This officer that we're talking about, he went through an experience and a tragedy in his life where there was no way that he was ever going to rebound from that. The accusations of him being a murderer versus a law enforcement professional changed his life forever. There's no way that you can look back on this incident that took place. The hands up incident, guys, it was a lie. Michael Brown attacked that officer that day, and in that day, Michael Brown made a decision. I don't care if he was 18, he made a decision. Hands up, don't shoot. He didn't do that day. His hands were down. They were attacking this law enforcement officer, and they were trying to take a gun. Now, many of you who don't agree with me, you might be getting angry right now. And that's okay. We should get angry. We should get angry together. We should be so angry that we have allowed corporate media and political controlled politicians to push a narrative to divide our country. You wonder why we are where we are today. You wonder why we have such a divide? Many of you that listen and have a different opinion want to say that Donald Trump created this, the 45th president. Donald Trump did not create racism. Let's go out on the limb right here. Let's say this. Let's say Donald Trump is a racist. Let's just all say he is. I don't think he is. I'll agree with you out there that want to say that. Let's say he is. Did he create racism? Was he involved in 2014 when fake news, corporate media came out and attacked this police officer for doing his job? You know, and I really can't blame corporate media when you see someone like Barack Obama, the president, who happens to be a man of color, coming out in front of this topic. And I believe in his heart that he was doing it for the right reason. I believe in his heart he thought, initially, after the initial information, that this was a shooting by an officer who was rogue. And it was proven not to be true. The FBI cleared this officer. The FBI cleared him of any wrongdoing. But it wasn't the FBI that cleared him, guys. It was the eyewitness reports at the incident that day. You see, when you look back at events that take place, there's always an investigation that ensues. And I do remember back in 2014 when this was taking place and the energy of this country was going in a different direction. I remember distinctly the law enforcement professionals who were commenting, obviously, we recommend that you take the time to allow a thorough investigation to take place. Who did not take the time to allow a thorough investigation to take place? The President of the United States. Those on a liberally motivated party politics mission to destroy and divide this country. And I'm talking about Democrats in general. There's not all bad Democrats, but in this case, the people who took advantage of this situation, they took advantage of it at a time in our country, and it cost us, the American people, greatly. You see, if the story was told correctly and Michael Brown was as it was that day, eyewitnesses offered information that the corporate media didn't want to talk to. They wanted to talk to the eyewitness reports that weren't even in present during the incident. Or the people who flew in, the Al Sharptons of the world, who wanted then to make a political statement out of this tragedy. Now, I'm picking this one event because this one event, it was the inspiration to Black Lives Matter. So if you want to take what is a really good cause and you want to root it in its beginning, the energy that started its birth, you're going to take Michael Brown and this incident in Ferguson Hands up, don't shoot, was built on a lie. And when you look at the obvious situation now where we are in this country, you think about, how did we get here? How did we get here? Listen, racism has been since the beginning of time, and we will always have racism. We know that. We need to unite as a people and fight against racism. We need to unite as a people and fight against evil. You see, the problem was, the evil that day was Michael Brown. But corporate media, you wanted to blame the men and women in blue because it sells papers, because it gives you an opportunity for you to put things on the news and to cover this divide, and it gets everyone overwhelmed. And since this incident in 2014, our country has seen many more incidents take place. And because of this lie, Black Lives Matters was formed, organized to some extent, and then went throughout the country and was able to really take a look at each and every one of these incidents that take place after the Michael Brown incident. Has been on a magnitude of really high profile every time that there's a shooting. Now, there's been many shootings in this country, as I said, or many law enforcement involved incidents that took place, and I won't call them many, but there's been enough that we can remember back in history where there have been bad actors who wear a badge. I still believe that 99.9% of the law enforcement men and women across the board are good, honest, hardworking Americans. What do you think? You think Michael Brown was a victim? You think Michael Brown was a victim? I think Michael Brown was a victim, actually. He was a victim of social issues, that were on promises unkept. In Democratic-controlled populations across this country, in cities where mayors are Democrats, liberal governors who run the states are promised time and time again that we're going to change the quality of life for you, the people, especially those who live in these areas, prominently of color and economic struggles. But yet each and every time one of these phony politicians run for office, they step out in front of a podium, they make these promises, and each and every one of these times, you know what happens? Nothing changes. Nothing changes in these areas because their promises are fake. They're about getting elected, not about change. You see, if there was one person that had the ability to say, Michael Brown is a tragedy, it would have been Barack Obama. He could have stepped in front of that conversation that day. And what he could have done for race division in this country could have been amazing. But he failed. You see, he failed on that level. I've always spoke highly. I think Barack Obama, the human, is a great guy. I'm not speaking ill of his humanity. I'm not speaking ill of his ability to be one of the greatest orators of all time. He's an amazing speaker. He's an amazing inspiration. And I'm glad he was our president because I think it exposed us to a place where we needed to be. But yet, Barack Obama had one opportunity, one chance, and he partnered with the corporate media to perpetuate a lie. This entire incident that took place, hands up, don't shoot, was built on a lie. What do you think of that? I know what I think. I think that this incident that took place in 2014 in Ferguson was a tragedy. Michael Brown was failed by systems and systematic systems who keep people impoverished. I don't think they purposely do it, but they don't know how to fix the problem. And how do I know that? And how can I guarantee that's true? That's not a fake news report? These parts of the country that have consistently been crime-ridden states, cities, where we now are seeing, in current news today, we're seeing hundreds of incidents taking place across this country, like in Seattle, Washington, and many other states. In New York, just 2 days ago or 3 days ago, there was an incident that took place that's being investigated, and we will be talking about on News Rocky, where a pack of hooligans, these animals, attacked innocent people in New York City, stripped them of their clothes and beat them and stabbed them in New York City. I did put a post up and I did get a great response from many people and said, is anyone planning a trip to the city? I'd be interested to find out if you have any plans to go to the city. Do you want to maybe go to Chicago, where more fatalities take place because of promises that are failed by the establishment, the mayor's office, the governor's office? Do you want to go anywhere else in the country? How about you go out to Seattle, Washington? Why don't you go out to the capital of Starbucks and find out what Antifa is doing to your streets? You see, the lies and the perpetuation of lies through corporate media have been going on a long time. You know, even before Richard Jewell in 1996, this was taking place. But corporate media today wants to claim that they're the ones to identify fake news. They're the ones that are going to put out the fire of fake news when they actually create it. Michael Brown, as much of a tragedy as it was, and a life loss is not anything to be at all happy about. It was his fault. He attacked that officer. That officer was exonerated of any charges, did not get charged, did not get sentenced, and did not do a day in jail, but his life has been ruined. I don't so much know if Michael Brown himself and the incident ruined the officer's life, but the fake corporate media and your attempt to drive down and drill down and destroy good, honest, hardworking people to push a narrative is a disgusting, low-rent tactic. And you know what? News Rocky wants to tell you straight up, all you corporate news media people, and you can go down the long list of them. I love to pick on Don Squeezing Lemons because there's a guy who is just intellectually advanced so that he speaks so smart. He's such a bright guy. His tongue is filled with venom. And all he wants to do is divide. All he wants to do is create an opportunity to point a finger so he can make a narrative. See, corporate media, that's what they want to do. They want to create stories so we, the American people, can keep arguing. I want to get onto a more recent fake story. A more recent fake news article that was pushed through by the corporate media. So, Jussie Smollett. So Jussie Smollett, which was a actor on the series Empire, was living in Chicago. And I guess Jussie, as you look at his situation, he was a decent actor. He had gotten lots of roles and had gotten a lot of opportunities with this role in Empire. He was becoming quite celebrity. He decided he wasn't quite up to par with his celebrity status where he needed to be. He wanted to be able to make and earn more money. So what Jussie came up with, he plotted a plan. He plotted a plan to get attacked. And so how the story rolls out from the corporate media was that Jussie Smollett was walking the streets of Chicago. And he had this attack by these two white men who were wearing MAGA hats, obviously known as the Donald Trump hat. And they were holding a noose, and they beat him like an animal. This was the story that Jussie Smollett told. But not only did Mr. Smollett tell the story, the corporate media told the story. He was on all the different network TV shows telling his story. He was on all the different TV shows with the tears coming out of his eyes. Right away, there was much speculation and many law enforcement professionals, including some of the most impressive organizations in Chicago, that were coming right out and really suspecting that something was afoul here. But Jussie Smollett was protected and inspired by not just the corporate media. Jussie Smollett was being talked about by many of the politicians throughout this country. You can look it up, folks. There's nothing here that's hidden. You see, unless somebody went on Google and wiped the entire service of all the history here, you should be able to find it. You know, I say that as far as wiping history, but I will promise you, we're going there. When you start to suppress the First Amendment rights of the President of the United States, you don't think they're going to go? They're going to go with cancel culture here? That they're going to go and wipe history clean? You don't think that Jussie Smollett was given an opportunity because he was embraced by the Black Lives Matters movement at the time? He was embraced by the people who felt that Donald Trump was a racist, who led racism through this country. You see, Donald Trump, he inspired people on both sides of the aisle to stand up for what they believe in. But one thing happened. The opposite part of Donald Trump was the negative part of Donald Trump was he inspired people to do whatever it takes to destroy him and anyone that believes America's great. Kind of unique that Jussie, he chose to use this concept of white attackers wearing the President Trump's slogan on their hat, carrying a noose. You know, later on as the story goes and the investigation ensued, as we realize, he actually hired 2 Haitian actors to dress up and to role play this attack. Even give him a couple of whacks on the cheek. Jussie planned this whole thing right out like any Hollywood producer would. But you know what he failed to do? He failed to tell the truth. And you see, when you don't tell the truth, you're going to get caught. You're eventually going to get caught. And Jussie was caught. He's being charged. He's pending. One of the best things that happened out of COVID for anybody was this clown, because his story went from front page to the back page. But yet we sit here in this country after one of the most pulverizing year elections between Joe Biden, our now president, and Donald Trump. And we sit here being told by the corporate media how racially divided we are, how we are as a people wrong. But yet when corporate media pushes forward this agenda, they don't apologize. They just look you square in the eye, just like I am in the camera, and tell you some more news. They forget about it. They have a skill that's unlike most. That's why they're really professionals. That's why a Cuomo becomes a Cuomo and a lemon becomes a lemon, because they can get in front of a camera and they can say whatever they want and try to convince you that it's the truth. You see, fake news is interesting because the accusations of fake news that come out of the mouths of these corporate media, narrative pushing, self-serving, political motivated individuals, that narrative is one to divide this country. We've witnessed that ourselves over the last year. The divide in this country has never been greater. But think about it. Back when this incident took place, do you remember? Do you remember what was going on throughout the country? There was marches. There was rioting going on. Many people of all cultures and races came out and supported Mr. Smollett because they believed that he was telling the truth, because corporate media perpetuated the lie. So where and when are we going to hold corporate media accountable? You see, when you talk like this, you know what happens? I'll probably lose my First Amendment rights. I'll be shut down on all the social media platforms. I won't be able to speak because News Rocky will get shut down. I believe that's going to happen. I believe the fact that I'm going to keep doing my job and calling out fake corporate news media, that they're going to come at us. I think I want to shut this show down. We'll figure it out and we'll keep fighting, because I'm not going to give up. You see, there's one thing that inspires me at this point in my life. I've served in political office here in the state of Connecticut. I've served in the State House. I've been behind the curtain of politics. I know what it looks like. There are some amazingly great people on both sides of the aisle, guys. Not everyone is a Chuck Schumer or a Nancy Pelosi. Not everyone is a Mitt Romney or a George W. Bush. And I'm not very favorable of those individuals. History will not speak well of the George W. Bush era, will not speak well of the Bush family. When real history is told, you'll know how many warmongering decisions were made by those families. Mitt Romney is another individual who's been a political sort of player for a very long time as the governor of Massachusetts and now the senator in Utah, but constantly has been in the political forefront. Lost an election to Barack Obama because he was a failed candidate. Has a real canny ability to try to be Republican, but he's not. And it's not the fact that he's not Republican that I care. It's the fact that the narrative that goes forward is shared by these same insiders. Washington insiders, Republicans and Democrats alike, They team up with the corporate media narrative each and every time, and they push the agenda forward. This is a problem in our country. It is a problem for our future. You know, we were told, right, historically, that Michael Brown was murdered by a police officer. We now know that was not true. Michael Brown and his actions caused the police officer to defend himself. We know now that Mr. Schmaltz was not attacked by two white men, but rather two Haitian men that he hired to do this staged event. But the corporate media told us others. They didn't want us to know the facts. And when Schmaltz went on every one of these shows he was on, I think he was on Oprah, I think he was on all the shows, special shows, we got to interview him, you know, and he cried the tears, and he was out in, you know, in front of this conversation, and he even went and did some plays at the time. Of course, this was pre-COVID. And he was just being a celebrity. He was a celebrity. He was a victim. He was a victim. Who's the real victim in this case? The American people are the victim. And you know who is the real agitator? You, the corporate media. Because all you've done each and every time, in every one of these incidents, has tried to drive a divide. You should be ashamed of yourself. And those people who view and look at and pay attention and give any revenue to these organizations, shame on you. Quite frankly, shame on you. Cancel culture tells us that right now across this country, Mike Lindell from MyPillow is being attacked. He's being attacked because of his association and support for Donald J. Trump, the previous president of the United States. He's lost his ability to sell at Bed Bath & Beyond, and many other organizations have dropped the MyPillow brand. Cancel culture is taking place. But what happens if they're wrong? Like they've been in these cases we brought up. Richard Jewell. CNN killed Richard Jewell. They destroyed his life. They killed the spirit of that individual. But yet they get away with it. And then they go on and they have situations with Michael Brown, and the corporate media takes it and they drive it in 2014 with the support of then President Barack Obama. And they drive that home too. You see, this is all part of a big cycle of things that take place in this country. And unfortunately for us, the American people, we rely on the media to provide information. And in today's world, we have information at our fingertips. But the problem with information at our fingertips, even from the right-sided conversation or the left, is you're going to get what you want. You're going to be able to review what you want. If you want to hear about a conservative view, you're going to go on a conservative site. If you want to go onto a liberal site and hear about a liberal view, you're going to hear it on a liberal site. If you want conservative, you go on Fox News. If you want liberal, you're going to go on CNN. There's a problem with that. We need organizations of media. You know, when this country was founded, the First Amendment was a right that was important, as we were not going to be living a life under a dictatorship or ruler. We're going to be independent. And I don't want to suppress anyone's right to put news out. I don't think we should shut CNN down. I think she should be held accountable. You see, but the corporate media was smart about one thing. They were able to team up with the political control parties in this country. And once they did, now us, the Americans, the average everyday Americans who just want to get by, be part of the good part of life, living the American dream, we're being held accountable for things that we don't do. Do you know what corporate media was able to do to America this year in this past election? If you voted for Donald Trump, so say the Hartford Courant, the rag newspaper, the longest running rag newspaper in the country that is on its way out of business, here in Connecticut, said if you voted for Donald Trump, you're a racist, and this is why. I voted for Donald Trump, and I'm not a racist. And this is why. Because I said so. Okay? And this is the problem. We take little sound bites from people that say things in these different formats, and you know what? We believe them. They believed it about Richard Jewell because CNN said it was true. They killed that individual's life. They killed his spirit, and he died. 2014, we had Michael Brown involved in a shooting. Don't shoot was basically a lie because Michael Brown attacked the law enforcement officer. So say the witnesses of the same color skin as Michael Brown. You can read it. You can see the reports from the FBI. Oh, I know some of you are going to say, oh, I don't believe any of that. That's just, all that is, it's made up. Guys, listen, Barack Obama was in charge then. There was nothing made up about that investigation. It was a sad tragedy that an 18-year-old didn't have the guidance in his life, not only from his family, but from his community, his failed community, to have helped him. But that law enforcement officer was held accountable. His life was ruined because of you, corporate media. Then we had Mr. Schmaltz, who wanted to create an even bigger divide in this country and found attacking the President of the United States and identifying his attackers as these Republican right-wing Trump supporters. Do you guys find irony to that? That we just had an incident that took place in the capital of Washington, D.C.? We just had an incident that took place. And kind of getting ready for the show, I was able to pull up, and Wikipedia already has the 2021 storming of the United States Capitol, a full report already on Wikipedia. Now, I'm not saying Wikipedia is wrong or right, but they are sort of the curator of information, and one that I look at often for independent information. But I find it interesting that right out in the beginning of these statements, the storming of the United States Capitol was a riot and a violent attack against the 117th United States Congress. So right out of the box, this gathering that took place, that Donald Trump was certainly involved in supporting people converging on the Capitol, their Capitol. Just like when Congressman Waters said, when you're out there and you see a Republican or a Trump supporter, you yell at them, you scream at them, you do whatever it takes. Just like when Nancy Pelosi said, sometimes you got to punch them. Or Chuck Schumer said, I want to attack these people. Joe Biden, I'll take Trump around the corner and beat him up. You see, these same people who criticize, they perpetuate the lie. And the corporate media they get right in line with them. So when they attack, it took place here, this unfortunate event that took place, and it was certainly unfortunate. A law enforcement officer was killed. Many people were injured and killed at this event. One person being injured at this event is too many. You see, the Good Americans, that same day, we did a live show here, and we had people calling in from this Capitol rally, and it was positive. It was positive people. Our contributors were calling in saying how positive the event was, and they didn't see any of the violence. I was telling them, the people on the ground in Washington, D.C., that there's reports of violence going on, and they're storming the Capitol. Most of the people there, 90%, maybe 99% of the people that were there just to protest what they believed was an election that was stolen from their president and from their vote. Now, we can debate that conversation all day long, but isn't the First Amendment for us the freedom for us to speak and be heard and to show our respect to our Constitution? Isn't that important? You see, they're taking this incident that took place by these evildoers who, the News Rocky show came right out that day. We'll keep saying it. I know many really smart people who understand this situation on both sides, understand that, look, there were some bad actors, and we want each and every one of them arrested and put in jail and held accountable. No one's denying it. But you, the corporate media, want to push an agenda through that says that Donald J. Trump, the former president of the United States, he incited this. And this is the thing that this whole impeachment trial that we're getting up to, and sort of as we close out the show here today, and we're talking about fake media, fake corporate media, and the way they perpetuate the lies, and historically, we know that this is going to be something that will be challenged in the future. You see, Donald Trump was voted out of office, and although I think that there might have been some corruption at many levels of this election, I accept the results. Because I appreciate my democracy even in its imperfect state. It's not a perfect scenario. Our democracy is still challenged with making some mistakes. And in many ways, what Donald Trump was able to do and inspire, many of you out there who are anti-Trump, and let's say that you're an AOC supporter, you should be very proud and happy of the fact AOC and the rest of the socialist movement, elected officials in Congress and the Senate. You know, Bernie Sanders has been there forever from Vermont. He's been the real deal, Holyfield. And by the way, that meme that's going around of Bernie Sanders, everyone loves. I thought it was cute, and I know Bernie sold I think it was sweatshirts or T-shirts or something with that on it for like $45, and he gave it all to a charity. Bernie Sanders is a good human, right? But the socialist actions that are taking place right now in Congress and the Senate through this new movement, they were all inspired by Donald Trump. They owe their elections to his ability to call out these narratives and conversations. And as I've said before, Donald Trump's not a perfect delivery of substance. He really often is a guy who inflames the issue versus trying to put things together. I think if he would have taken a moment, he'd still be in office and we'd be really, really a more united country. But unfortunately, he couldn't get it together. I still don't think he's guilty. I still don't think this impeachment hearing that's taking place here in Washington, D.C. is really for anything other than really to create an obstacle for the future for Donald Trump. Corporate media creating news again. Corporate media has created many of these issues that you read about in this Wikipedia article about the incident that took place on January 6, 2021. There are a lot of narratives that were created by fake corporate news. Yeah, a little bit of truth to them, but a lot of the incidents that are being talked about here. So on the show News Rocky today, we really delved into, we had 4 different examples. We had the 1996 Atlanta bombing that took place. Richard Jewell, unfortunately, was falsely accused by the fake corporate media at the time, CNN, and the rest of the folks that play that part. At the time, he was dragged through and his life was ruined. And eventually he died because I believe he was tortured by corporate media. And then you went on and we had the Michael Brown incident that took place in 2014, where this was the birthplace of Black Lives Matters. Michael Brown was not a victim. He was the subject. And he was later identified by eyewitnesses in that incident, that he was guilty of attacking that officer. And he was responsible for his actions. But you, the corporate media, along with the political party players, and yes, unfortunately then, Barack Obama, you did not hold anybody accountable other than the law enforcement officers doing their job. You've created the narrative and the divide in this country. And then we went on to Mr. Schmaltz. Mr. Smollett was an incident that took place where this substandard actor was trying to get more noted for an incident that he put together, where he actually was a producer in his own reality show and created this incident that took place in America at a time when we were being challenged by racial divide at a high level. The anxiety in this country has been inflamed by this incident that took place in Chicago. But yet the corporate media, they're crickets when it comes to Mr. Schmaltz. Mr. Smollett was somebody who was noted for his acting, but then got celebrity status because of this attack that took place. But then once it was proven and charged by the actual law enforcement professionals in Chicago, and corporate media had a chance to come out and really clean up their position, crickets. It tells me a lot about corporate media, and I hope it tells you a lot. As we go into the last topic we talked about, which was the most recent, was obviously on January 6th, this attack on the Capitol that took place. This attack on the Capitol had nothing to do, in my opinion, with the people who were gathering there peacefully and really empowered by the First Amendment under the Constitution of this country. The evildoers should be held accountable. But corporate media took this immediately and attacked the president. And by the way, guys, in the president's speech that day, he said at the end of his speech, now move up there and go peaceful. We're not going to do what they do. You know this to be true, but you see, corporate media wouldn't play that part of the speech. They rather play the pieces of the speech that sound like it inflames this sort of action that took place. And yes, Donald Trump owns a little responsibility, but I don't think an impeachment is the answer. Guys, this impeachment that's taking place, I'm going to tell you what it's going to do. It's going to divide this country even further. Corporate media is going to take advantage of this impeachment process, and they're going to try to drive every nail they can in the coffin of Donald Trump. I want you, the people who are listening to News Rocky, to share your thoughts with me on this topic, because I want to continue to cover this. As we watch this impeachment process go through, we're going to continue to talk about it. I'm going to continue to identify the areas that I think are most concerning. I don't really care about what party or what TV station is promoting what, as long as it's the truth. Guys, you've been listening to News Rocky today. This is Kevin, your host. We are part of the Forward TV program here at the 80 Broadway studio in downtown Norwich. We're really happy to bring you this show. We've been doing this for many months now. Looking forward to many to come. Really want to expand on many more topics. So what we really ask is each and every week, I try to put out like this broadcast here to you guys that are the News Rocky team members. Let me know what you want to hear about. Talk to me about what you want to see. Talk to me about what kind of guests you like to have. So upcoming shows, we're going to have people like, we have many senators and state representatives here in Connecticut and at the state level who are going to be coming on and talking about the state policies, some of the things that are going on in Connecticut in the future. We're also working on some national guests. We're going to be working on trying to talk about the story of this impeachment process. We're also looking at many other topics. In fact, some shows this week are going to be very interesting. I don't want to tell too much, but we're going to be talking to an insider who is going to share with us their intimate details, what they know about the dark state, the deep dark state, and what's going on behind the scenes, not just now currently, but across this country. You see, during the interviews you'll be seeing with this guest, who I will not be able to identify, we're going to be able to talk about some of the things that are taking place, and we'll provide facts so they can be investigated. See, News Rocky doesn't want to talk about this speculation. This isn't, the Inquirer. We don't want to create some sort of fake news story like the rest of the corporate media. We want to talk about the reality. We're going to talk to somebody who is an expert in this area, someone that has a background. We'll learn about the stories that were going on, and we're going to hear about the predictions from this guest about what he believes is going to take place over the next few months in America. Guys, thanks for tuning in to News Rocky today. This is Kevin, your host. Please tune in each and every day, Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. We'll be back tomorrow in the ring with you. See you then.